Welcome to Talkin with Tom, brought to you by Patreon. Oh, thanks for doing this.
Oh, I'm delighted, Tom. I appreciate the invitation to appear on Talking with Tom.
The first, the first one.
Well, I feel honored.
Yeah, because I want to give my Patreon folks some some added attractions that are not going to be available anywhere else, and we might try something like this with multiple people as well. But I thought
Oh, absolutely.
this would be
Well,
fun.
most of your Tom Saputo and friends have interesting stories to tell about their lives and their interests too.
Yeah. So this is Edgar, and first of all, tell me where you were on Monday.
Well, no, I wish that I could say I was having fun. It was the day after my birthday, and I certainly appreciate you uh, sending the birthday greetings on Facebook. I received a lot of nice comments from you and from other folks, other friends, and I tried to respond to all of them. I appreciate it, as I told you. Your Maxwell Smart missed it by that much.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite TV shows in the 1960s. Everybody loved Max and Agent 99 and the Chief and all the other characters on the Mel Brooks Buck Henry show.
Oh, that was a great show, and yeah. Well, Monday night we had I guess, about ten people total, and Ian was there, and he got to sing, I think, between 10 and 12 songs.
Well,
And
I laid out my clothes, my new clothes to go out there and enjoy life, but I just wasn't feeling the best, and so I ended up not going. But I was sad to have missed it because I knew it'd be fun, and I'm sure you were celebrating some birthdays. But I figured I better follow what my body's telling me.
well, Ogo,
I
I'm
was a
sorry to hear
little
that.
under the
Yeah,
weather.
yeah.
Yeah, me
Well,
too.
actually, the driving conditions were very rough going home. So actually, it was a good decision not to come out that night. Although, like you said, the people who came seemed to live close by.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
a gentleman by the name of Michael, I believe he's a military guy, and his female companion, and very nice person. He not only stayed all night, but he went outside and brushed down the cars for some folks like Judy, the server who lives out in Bowie, Maryland. So it was dicey coming home, um, but we did what we did, and so tell us about what you're doing now. What's some of the fun things in your life now?
Well, I'm doing all sorts of things. I'm doing a lot of art and writing projects. Uh, I'm have been participating in also a number of activities. A few months ago, I was able to participate in a Shakespeare theater acting class. I was able to work with a couple of their Shakespeare actors, Shakespeare theater actors, and that was a great experience as learning more about Shakespeare, and also meeting some people who were very talented actors whom I might call on for future productions. And I might be calling on you possibly for composing some cues or themes,
Uh-huh.
but I have to sign a letter of agreement, and so I'm waiting for that. But I'm doing a lot of things, some of which I've done most of my life, and some of which I'm doing for the first time.
Now, Shakespeare is very difficult. I mean, that's those words and phrases Very complicated, I think. So that was
Oh,
what an undertaking that must have been.
well, it was. It was about a 5 or 6 week session, and we did actors exercises to move, to speak with each other, to give and for, to and back types of responses. We also learned about the rhythm of Shakespeare. The lines have a certain rhythm to them, and the last class we did a scene from A Midsummer Night's Dream, and if you're familiar with the Pyramus and Thisbe scene, a group of itinerant, uh, they called them mechanicals. These are working people who are like weavers and tinkerers and things, but they like to act, so they're putting on a show for the king and queen. And so they're strictly amateur actors and not very good, but they rise to the occasion. It's quite a humorous scene. But our job was to, we were picked for different parts, and our job was to put on this play. And even doing that gets you inside of Shakespeare more. I've seen that play many times, but when you're on the inside trying to deliver the lines, whether you're doing a serious line or a comedy line, you get insight into what the actors are doing on stage. So it was a very valuable class. And so I was very grateful that I was, accepted in the
Yeah,
class.
yeah. I remember when I was doing research about memorizing lyrics that
Hmm.
Shakespeare and that whole realm had a lot of different ways to go about doing that that were very helpful and interesting. So that's amazing that so as a person when you're just watching, you just absorb something, but you got an opportunity to get inside and how amazing the dynamics are and the intricacies of what's happening.
Yes, and you can see when things are going well, and you can see when things are not going well. In other words, the most important lesson you learn is reacting to what the other actor says. Some actors just memorize their lines and then they deliver them at the right time, but the most effective actors are listening to the other actor. In other words, if you're speaking to me on stage, Tom, I don't just wait for my line to deliver back to you. I'm trying to listen to what you say so that I can tailor it to make it a more realistic or lifelike moment. So that's something I learned
Yeah.
as well.
And of course, the worst scenario with that is, and I'm sure you've seen this on YouTube, where people mouth the other person's the other actor's words while they're waiting. Like
Oh, yes.
Ringo does that in Hard Day's Night when he's walking with the little kid on the river there with a tire, and a couple times he mouths the words that the little boy does, just to because he's not a professional actor. But I,
No, no, but it's funny you say that. He clearly learned all the lines very well so that he could mouth them. He is effective in that scene. I believe him. And also, that scene was especially written for him. And I think at this point, I don't think he would be upset if people reveal that he noticed that there wasn't a great deal of scenes that were tailored to him, so that scene was written for Ringo, and I think it's a highly effective scene. And but that's interesting. The next time I watch A Hard Day's Night,
yeah,
I'm going to specifically watch him
yeah.
mouth the words of the small boy. The kid is pretty good too.
Oh yeah, but I think he might have been a professional actor. As
I'll
a
bet he was. I'll bet he was.
yeah. Well, of course, I don't want to get off on a Beatles tangent, but I'll just say that it's it's always amazing. They were so young, and just to think that a year prior, they were just, playing in the little clubs in Hamburg and whatever. And here they are making a movie, and they had so much charisma and so much, it's just it's an amazing phenomenon that I don't think we've ever seen, and we probably never will see again.
Well, there are many wonderful bands, but there are not a lot that have the charisma and the talent of the Beatles. In other words, I think Paul McCartney was probably in his early 20s when he wrote When I'm 64. He understood, well, someday I'm going to be 64. None of us think that.
Yeah.
But they are exceptional, and what I find quite fascinating is that it wasn't just the first generation that liked the Beatles. Every generation claims them. They enjoy them. In fact, I'll give you a story. When I went and saw Help, I watched the scene where they're skiing down the mountain, and George comes down with the top hat and the long coat. And as he's coming down, I'm saying, he's got the figure of a girl. George looks just like a girl. Well, anyway, 20 years later, I'm at a rock and roll convention, and I'm taking a break and having some lunch in the cafeteria of the hotel. So a bunch of young teenage girls or 20 something girls come in, and they're sitting, and one of them is talking about that same scene. And one of them says, "Did you see George ski down the hill with his top hat and coat? He looked just like a girl." So every generation seizes on those
Oh
things.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I don't want to get off on the Beatles thing, but it was just an
No, no.
amazing, amazing thing. Because people who watch it will go, "There goes Tom and Edgar talking about the Beatles." It didn't take long. So what else are you doing? So you did the Shakespeare thing.
I did the Shakespeare thing. And also, although, as you know, I sing with you, I really have not had any real training. So I was able to take another sort of a choral course that met for a number of weeks. And this again was, we may meet again, but the task was for people to try to learn the song Lean on Me. And we were able to work with a very distinguished individual who had been part of the military. He had been, he has actually worked with David Foster. Many of you may know who David Foster is. They call him the hit maker. And but anyway, so we worked on a sort of a a multi, I'm not even sure the right term, but multi-part, sort of a jazz-oriented uh, part of Lean on Me, and we were given a chance to quote try out for the solo part. And so I tried out for the solo part, lean on me when you're not strong. And again, I learned a lot about, releasing my energy, going for it. In fact, the individual who was doing it was recording it with his own little cell phone, and he'd lean in and he would give me directions, saying, "Let it go, let it go." So again, just as I've learned with you, Tom, in making recordings and of singing, uh, I feel that I've improved my abilities. Who knows what would have where I would be if I'd started when I was 10. But on the other hand, as we've discussed, you never want to say, "Gee, I wish I'd made that decision," because good things and bad things happen to you, whatever course of action you might have chosen.
Well, it's true. You're always learning, right? I mean, I've even to this day, even let's say with this Patreon and stuff like that, it's all learning. In fact, it might be something that doesn't take off, or doesn't sustain. Um, like as you know, I did the solo thing for the past year, and that was an experiment. and it really didn't fly. I mean, I don't want to go into detail why it didn't work, but boy, did I learn a lot. I learned a lot about what what's going to go over, what's not going to go over, what's going to be successful, where to put my energy, you know.
Yeah, well, you never lose by trying and by learning. I use the example, many people will know who Colonel Sanders is, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, apparently he had many Kentucky Frieds. He had Kentucky Fried Ham and Kentucky Fried Turkey, but he didn't hit it big until he was 65 with Kentucky Fried Chicken. So the moral is you keep trying, you keep stretching, and something you learn may pay off, in the future. So that's why I encourage people to give it a try, and even if you fail, you learn, and that's what the great inventors say: you keep trying.
Yeah, I mean, and that's such an interesting story because he would not have become such a iconic figure in the world if his social security check would have been high enough for him not to have to pursue it. But like you said, when he reached 65 and the social security check was so low, he said, I can't live like this. And he looked for things. And like you said, he had all these recipes. I'm guessing they're family recipes, I guess. And, and then of course, like I think you and I have talked that he didn't have the KFC at first. It was more or less in like a franchise in different restaurants. And when I was a kid, the place was called Tops.
Yes, yes, I went to Tops also, and then it became Geno's. Yeah,
Oh
we're
yeah.
we're from the same area. Well, Geno's had it, so I know there's some complex way in which someone else bought it out from him. But you're right. You're right. I remember Tops had their sirloiner.
Yeah.
As Henry VIII says, with his knife on your shoulder, Tom, I dubbed thee sirloin. Or actually, he went on they had a sirloin in front of him for dinner one night, and it was so delicious. He tapped his sword on the piece of meat and says, "I dub you sirloin," and that's where sirloin came from.
I'm gonna
At least that's what I've heard.
let me just check my thing real quick. Well, I think I'm okay. Uh, yeah. It's hard.
I'm okay. You're
It's
okay.
hard to
That's
know, if it's recording correctly or not. It's just with the way I'm doing it here. I'm also, by safety, I'm doing an audio recording on my cell phone, so
oh
just as a
good.
safety feature. Yeah, then that's one. See, that's one benefit of the Zoom. The Zoom has a recording element that I can just push the button, and maybe we'll try that next time. But I can already tell that the picture is clearer.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. Well, I always believe in insurance. Uh, when I would have a production being presented, and I would hopefully have a individual making a video of it, I always would do an insurance copy uh, in case something happened. And uh, one time I had a rehearsal in the morning for this show, and I asked the engineer to record it for me. He said, "Well, why do you want me to record it, Edgar?" And I didn't want to tell him the real reason. I said, "Well, because I study the recordings, which is true, and I may make changes before the evening show." And he said, "All right, okay." Well, anyway, so he recorded it. He recorded the audio for me, and then he gave me a USB. Well, anyway, that night, uh, he recorded the show. He recorded a bunch of shows, and the next morning I say, "Well, where's my USB?" And he says, "Well, Edgar, I had a problem. My computer file was corrupted." So he had lost all the recordings for that night's shows. But because I had gotten the recording for the morning rehearsal, I was able to work with an individual to cut out all my directions and actually make a copy of the show to give to the actors. And if I hadn't asked for that, I would have had nothing for the whole day of work, for
Yeah.
our radio production.
Yeah, that's one of my probably downfalls with the whole recording thing. I am not good at keeping it. Once I figure that it's done, that's the that's the end of it, you know. And then someone might ask me a year later, "Hey Tom, can we come back and change something?" It's like, no, I don't have the the organic original stuff anymore. Um, and that's just a matter of me being lazy and not putting some effort into it and wanting to move quickly, and that kind of thing.
Oh no, well your time is money, and I understand it. But also, here's a tip, and I've been told this by experts. People will, people used to listen to records, and then they got the tape machines, and so they would tape everything on a cassette tape and throw away their record, and then they would throw away, their tape and have it on CD. But the thing is, there are always new technologies that are coming along. And so you always keep your original source because you're able to get stuff out of the original source that you can't get from a subsequent thing. Now, digital is different. But in any way, if you can hold on to your original recording, it's better to have than have a subsequent, production. But again, we're all busy. We can't keep everything, but I wish we could.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, gosh, I have so many recordings over the past 40 or 50 years done in little studios and things, and who knows where those tapes are. And back in those days when a individual would go into a recording studio, the first thing you had to do was buy the tape, and the big thick tape normally. And that at the
Yes.
time I believe it was $40 or $50 for a reel. I think it lasted maybe an hour. It depends on how fast it was going. But
Yeah.
it was already expensive, right from the get go. And of course, you didn't have the flexibility that you have now. What's happening now, of course, with the computer, and this is probably not just recording, but anything, saving it is also a technical ability, and
Yeah.
it might not be easy to, like in recording, for instance, for me, there's different parts to it. There's like I don't know what you would call it, the skeleton of it, where like visually I would look at something, but then there's also some sound that goes with that, and they don't
Hmm.
save together very well. I mean, you have to you have to like you could save one of them and not have the other, and you're kind of screwed. So that's my problem. I mean, that's something I probably need to work on a little bit more.
Well, don't feel bad, Tom, because you may be familiar with the Alfred Hitchcock movie North by
Sure.
Northwest. Well, when they wanted to put it out on videotape, they got the original, the images, and they got the original recording because they wanted to do a remastering of it. Well, what they found was that the audio recording was starting to deteriorate. And so what they actually had to do, they had to run the tape through the machine, and they had to record it, get the sound off of it, because as it went through the recording heads, it shredded. So North by Northwest was nearly at the edge of
Wow.
destruction,
Wow.
and they rescued it, but they had only one pass of the tape through the machine. So there's lots of things like that.
Now with AI, um, I think what's going to happen is so many things have the potential to be better visually and audibly. And I guess they're going to have to make financial decisions whether they want to do that. For instance, there's a program that I use all the time now. I think it's called Adobe, I don't know, audio or something like that. But anyway, let's say you record something on your phone and it's a normal recording. When you upload it to this free app, it makes it clean. There's no background noise. It sounds like you're in a radio station. So all these older movies, like for instance, I forgot which one I was listening to. Some old movie like a Laurel and Hardy or Abbott Costello, something.
Yeah.
It's so noisy. It's so noisy. And now with AI, they're going to be able to take all that noise out. But it's going to be time consuming and also financially, you know, an investment.
Yeah.
So now the good news is though individuals will be able to do it. So like someone like you or me might say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to
Yeah.
put,
Oh, yeah.
put it on YouTube or whatever, cleaned up. And of course, also visually too. I
Absolutely.
mean, visually, they have some stuff that's crazy. I don't know if you saw the Tony Martorella video that I did about a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
What I found was a practice tape. Now, it was not really a practice tape. It was something where he just wanted a 1-1 run through, me playing and him singing. And
Yeah.
it was good, so he didn't need any punch ins or anything, and he's on key and everything's great. So what I did was I took a picture and it animated the picture. So when you look at this video, you see him moving sort of like you're moving now almost. And yeah, it's not 100% perfect, but just to get to the point though, with AI, I don't know if you saw this thing on Elvis now. They're gonna, of course, they did the what do you call it, the holograph or something where.
Yes. Of Roy Orbison and Buddy
So
Holly.
now AI is gonna take it like 100 steps even higher, because what the video said was they're going to take pictures and him moving like thousands of samples and put it all into this thing. So when he, I don't know if you're going to be able to interact with it or what, but it's going to be so lifelike. They say it's going to be scary.
I've been to several of those holographs, and the audiences, they enjoy the shows, but they're confused. Do you applaud for a holograph? It's a bunch of atoms of light. But I'll give you a tip, and I probably people who are putting these on won't appreciate it, but it's best if you sit directly in front of the holographic image. If you sit to the side, you'll be able to see the violinist in the orchestra who's supporting Roy or Buddy. I was going to say Buddy Love, but that's Jerry Lewis or Buddy
Yeah.
Holly. But no, but it's amazing. And there's always new discoveries being made. The experts knew that Hank Williams had written a song called "The Log Train," and it was about a tribute to his father, who I think was on a train. He was some type of conductor or something. And but they said we I don't he don't think he ever recorded it. Well, 40 years after he died, they found a lacquer recording of the log train, and they have saved it, and now you can hear that on YouTube. So there are things that we think are lost, but they turn up every day.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, you're right. It's crazy, and it's kind of funny to look at the progression of how things have gone. When you and I were growing up, there was nothing like tribute bands and holographs and of course all the most of the bands had the original members. I mean, you can't imagine going to see, a band like the Beatles or Hermits in those days, and someone was not a Hermits hermit.
Well, that's right.
So
They're all live and young. It's so you never think of them getting older, but then when you go to their 50th reunion and you see the bands have a lot of new members and maybe one or two of the original ones, the passing of time is very present in your mind.
yeah, I mean, so now people are paying big money to see bands that might have just one original member or maybe no original members. And then, of course, you have the
Yeah.
tribute groups that sometimes sell out these places like Wolf Trap. I mean, I know I saw ABBA many years ago, the ABBA tribute band. It was
Yeah.
place was packed, and it was the dynamic was exactly the same as if it was the real ABBA.
Well, people are hungry for the
Yes.
experiences. Older people are hungry for to recapture what they knew when they were kids, and the young kids have heard about this fabulous group ABBA, and they've seen Mamma Mia and other things. So they want to see what ABBA looked like back in
Right.
1974.
And then, of course, on the other side, though, you say, well, where are the younger people? Unfortunately, the younger people don't have the format to become icons like Cher and Madonna. There's nothing there. There's no radio. I mean, this is a very intricate subject, but you know, the radios were bought up in the early 90s by about four or five major companies, and they just decided to, you know, do their format. And so if you're 20 years old or 22 and you were like a young Cher or a young Paul McCartney, there's no avenue for you to become iconic. So there aren't going to be any more icons, not a lot. You know, Taylor Swift, I guess, you know, is somebody who's doing it. But there's not going to be that many as like when you and I were growing up, they were all, you know, doing it.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I've always felt, and I think this helps keep me young, is that I believe that every new musical phase that comes through, there will be people that will be remembered. In other words, you look at hip hop and rap, and uh, a lot of those people are one hit wonders or have a couple of hits. But I think there will be people like the Beatles and like Neil Young and Bob Dylan that people will listen to. They will speak to their generation, and others will appreciate it. My parents didn't like the Beatles when they first came out. In fact, they knew the Beatles were coming to Washington D.C. in 1964, and they didn't tell us, so we missed out on seeing them. But later on, they realized how good the Beatles were, so they became fans
Yeah, I
too.
remember one of my friends' fathers back in those days. He said, "Can you imagine $5 to see the Beatles?" You know, he wouldn't pay $5 if you put a gun to his head. But like you said, I
No,
understand it. If you were an older person in the '60s, these guys with these mop tops singing loud, you know, I understand that they wouldn't be able to see the magic as we did, you know.
no, no, that's true. Of course, Lorne Michaels, didn't he offer $1,000 to the Beatles to reunite on Saturday Night Live? And he says, split it any way you want.
Yeah.
Give Ringo
Yes,
less
I
if you
remember
wish.
that. Because I think
That was
they
so.
were down the street or something, or at least John and Paul were down the street.
They were going to come
Yeah.
by, and I don't know if they did, but
No.
I don't think he gave them the 1,000. But I mean, it was all done tongue in
Yeah.
cheek. But it wouldn't have been funny if they all had shown up and, well, where's our
Yeah.
1,000, Lauren?
So what's happening in 2024 now for you? Do you have any like big trip coming up or big something happening?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm actually in the early stages, but I'm sometimes part of art or writing workshops, and in my art, I sometimes will tell a story. There'll be a writing prompt or an art prompt, and I will either write about something from my childhood or my adulthood as a missile launch officer, or maybe even something from now. And apparently, my work touches the other participants. So, one individual spoke with me today, and it's probably too premature to say this, but they say, Edgar, we want you to do a once a month kind of storytelling, for people to come and listen and, be part of. So if that comes to pass, I'll let folks know where they can go. And I believe it'll be free. If you want to make a donation, the individuals putting on would probably split it with me. But I was very touched when they said, well, Edgar, all the people in this workshop or whatever, love your stories. So that was
Yeah.
very touching to me. So it may happen, we'll see. But it was interesting that I was in discussions today about that. I may be doing something else, but I'm not yet ready to discuss that project until I get a letter of agreement.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, with the new, with the new technologies and just the cell phone is so good at making movies. I mean, there might be something like that for you down the line where you do your own half-hour production or comedy or something, and just use a couple of iPhones.
Oh, absolutely. Well, people have been telling me for a number of years that I should be doing a podcast. And maybe you should be doing a podcast too, Tom, because you do a lot of great things on YouTube and you have had Zoom things in the past. Maybe it's time for the Tom Saputo
Yeah.
podcast, but I don't know. It's a lot of work and you've got to be dedicated. But again, you never know what will strike and what will hit.
Well, that's true. I have a lot of, I have, well, I think I have four YouTube channels, and the one that seems to be, I'm getting a lot of people interested who I don't know because that's the key. A lot of people go, "Hey, great job," but the ones out of the
Yeah.
blue is about an audio program called Audacity. It's just like
Yeah.
it's a free.
I know Audacity.
So that's the one where every day I get so and so subscribed, and I don't know the person. And it's like the other ones that I do that are more musical. Uh, I'm not getting very much traction at all. And the reason, of course, is because people know Audacity, so they're looking for it.
Yeah.
Whereas nobody knows pretty much who I am, in the world. So they're not looking for Tom.
Well, you're too modest, but you make a
Yeah.
good point. Audacity is known. It's a very good sound system for recording and manipulating and making changes. So that may be a breakthrough for
Yeah,
you.
so it's just good to know. And like you said, if you would have asked me, I probably wouldn't have thought that. But now that it's happening, it's like, oh, that makes sense. That's a common thing. Whereas if I do my, even now the other one I do that I kind of like is the solo jazz piano one. I call it bedroom jazz. And that's an easy one sort of for me to do because it's just a matter of me putting on a camera and me playing a 5 minute standard. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because as you probably know, you have to weigh things as far as how much time am I going to put into this and how much am I going to get out of it, as far as how much time because like you say, you can say, okay, I'm going to write a Broadway play, but that might take 5 years of your life, and what's going to be the result? Maybe not as much, you know. So it's like, oh, I better not. I better do something else, maybe.
Well, maybe you should do it in the exact opposite because somebody said it's not the destination, it's the journey. If you spend 5 years writing the Broadway play, maybe you got 5 years of joy out of it. Maybe it'll strike big, maybe it won't. But by God, you have a Broadway play, and how many people don't have a Broadway play? So I don't know. I'm thinking more and more that it's the destination, and sometimes you're the journey, you get stopped and you get celebrated for whatever you're doing along the way. But maybe that was the goal. But again, I'm getting too
Well, no, but
philosophical.
that's absolutely true, though, because that's what happens when you're a kid, when you're just starting out, whatever, acting, music, writing. You're you're thinking, oh, this is going to be great, and people are going to like this, and it really motivates you. But once once you get beaten down in life so many times, now you start. Let's say I'm going to write a book, but let's say you wrote 3 or 4 books and nothing happened. It's like, oh boy,
Yeah.
this is a lot of work, and I'm gonna sacrifice a lot of time, uh, and so it changes the dynamic of the whole thing. Because when I was a kid, I loved to write songs and record songs, but I thought there was a chance that something bigger would happen. But now that I now that I know that nothing's going to happen, I'm not as
Well,
motivated.
well, no, I appreciate that. That's a common feeling, but the thing is, you never give up hope. Maybe it's the 5,000th song you wrote that hits. Uh, we're getting esoteric here, but the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, I had to study him at Georgetown, and I actually knew a guy that was his best friend, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. But he sent the manuscript for, I think, No Exit to 47 different publishers who all turned him down, but he kept sending it out, and eventually a publisher published it, and he became famous. And I wasn't going to do it, but I'll tell you this great story. I had a philosophy professor at Georgetown University named Wilfred Desan, and he looked like a philosopher. He had a big head of, white hair, and he said, "Knowledge for Plato." And anyway, one day he says, as my good friend Jean-Paul Sartre said to me, and everybody's sitting in the audience thinking, "Oh yeah, right. Your best friend is Jean-Paul Sartre." But anyway, I happened to go and get a book written by Jean-Paul Sartre, and in the introduction he says, "To my good friend Wilfred Desan."
Wow.
So uh, good old Wilfred Desan was telling the truth when he said that his good friend was
Yeah.
Jean Paul Sartre.
Oh, that's great. Well, Edgar, I don't want to take up your whole night. Well, don't tell me what you're going to do if it's going to get you in trouble tonight.
No. I'll tell you when I know, and but like I say, I'm open to new things. And one of the great things about your Tom Saputo and friends, and this will be a little ad for you, is that people love to sing, and you give people a chance to be on stage, to express themselves, to share their joy in singing with others. And I know that you have everybody from professionals who come and try out material to talented amateurs, but anybody can, come and for the price of dinner at the restaurant, can get up and sing a song with the expert musical accompaniment that you provide. So anyway, and you never know when a representative from the William Morris Agency is in the audience.
I think it would be a great what do they call it? A realistic show, a real uh what's the name of the show where it's a real
Reality
reality.
show.
I think it would be fantastic to maybe follow four or five of the folks as they go around to different places and they sing and they prepare for singing and maybe also talking to some of the people from the restaurants. I guess Edgar, everybody has a really interesting story. That's just the restaurant owners, the people the servers,
Yep.
all the singers, the
The
non-singers.
client, you and you
Yeah.
too. I was doing a part in a play, and the director asked me to do an Irish accent. He wanted me to do an Irish accent for the police commissioner. And I argued with him because I said, well, the police commissioner himself in New York would not have been an Irishman. He said the police would. But anyway, he prevailed. He demanded that I do an Irish accent. Okay. Well, anyway, in the audience that night was a director who was getting ready to direct his own show. and he heard me do the police commissioner. This was for the Shadow in an Irish accent. And he later contacted me and says, Edgar, I've got a part for you. I want you to play a CIA operative in during the Vietnam War, and this was a true story. And I would not have gotten that part if he hadn't heard me act another part with an Irish accent. And the gratification of doing that part was the author who wrote the story and knew all the people. He came up to me after our recording session and he said, "You sound just like the
Wow.
man." And I said, "Well, tell me about him. Well, what happened?" He says, "He was killed a few months after the story I'm telling was done." So you just never know who's going to
Yeah.
see you. Always give your best performance because you never know, and it's the journey, not necessarily the destination. But that's my deep philosophical comments for you. But again, thank you
Thanks,
very
Edgar, for
much
doing this.
for having me.
Yeah.
It was delightful. Let's do it again, and I'm looking forward to hearing other folks that you reach out to and hearing their thoughts and their
All
stories.
right. So I'm going to see if this worked, and I'll do my best to send you something. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
and I think there's a way that I can make the data smaller that you could send it over the email. I'm not sure how I got
Oh,
things to you in the past, but well, of course, the Zoom videos seem to be okay as far as sending them.
it depends. Our Dropbox, I
Yeah,
think, is another
yeah.
way.
Okay. Well, be careful tonight where
Well,
you go,
great.
wherever you're going.
I sure will. And I like your new lodge there behind you.
Yeah.
Your ski lodge
Yeah,
there.
this is Google Meet, and it seems to be a little bit have more options than Zoom. But like I said, I'm a little nervous about the recording because Zoom is easier and it seems more predictable. So I'm not sure which direction I want to go in for the next one, but we'll see.
Well,
All
sounds
right,
great,
Edgar.
Tom.
Thank you so much.
You have a good
It was very,
evening.
very
You bet,
kind of you
Tom.
to do this.
Oh, delighted
Okay.
to.
Bye.